Hey there everybody, my name is Sara Naumann from Studio SN. I'm talking to you live from the CHA show in Anaheim, California, where I am pleased to be part of the Clearsnap booth. And today we're playing with their wonderful pigment inks as well as some of their art screens, stencils, embossing powder, and more. We're going to have a great time, so thanks for joining us. I just want to say thank you for coming today. My name is Sara Naumann, and I'm just so thrilled to welcome you to the Clearsnap booth. So we have 45 minutes together, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that we have a fantastic time and that this can be a good grand finale to the end of your show. Today we're going to be making two cards, and you have in among all of your wonderful things in front of you, you've got you've got a stencil, you've got an art screen, you've got lots of ink pads, you've got embossing powders, you've got stamps, you've also got somewhere, and if you don't have it, let me know because I can get you another one, a postcard with the two projects that we're doing today. As well, on the back, you have the instructions and supplies. So this is just a nice take-home as well as a good reminder as we're working. So just wanted to point that out to you. So today we're going to be playing with pigment ink pads and embossing powders, and as you can see, the art screens on here as well. Now, with pigment ink pads and Clearsnap does a beautiful job with these. And just, I mean, for one thing, look at the colors. Actually, I'm going to show you my two favorites. Look at the colors. Oh yeah, those are pretty together too. Oh, we all have our own favorites. The wonderful thing about pigment ink is that it has a very spongy pad and it's very juicy. So what this allows you to do is have some great opportunities for brayering, which we'll do, for blending. It has great blendability, which I don't think is a word, but you all know what I mean. Wonderful blendability, easy application, and also because it stays wet for a long time, you can use it as an embossing ink, which is what we're going to be doing. Now, the two cards that we're going to be making are these two right here. And for this card right here, I just want to talk about each one before we get into them. With this card right here, we're going to do some brayering with the pigment inks. We're also going to do what I call overall embossing, and I don't know that that's a technical term, but you'll see what I mean. So as I'm holding this, I think you can see the shimmer of it. That's all embossing powder. That's what's making that shimmer because I have done it over all the front of the card. So that's two techniques that we're going to do with this. With the second card, we're going to use the art screens, stencils with embossing powder and pigment ink. We're also going to do what I call a partial embossing. So you can see on this stamped feather right here, it's not entirely blue and it's not entirely pink. It is partially embossed. First, we're going to start with this card right here, and you have in front of you a striped card. These are the creative cards. These are from Clearsnap, and they are exactly what they look like. They come packaged 5 to a package of 1 design, and this is the Inline. And what's nice about these, I'm sure you have students and you have customers who go, I just need a little shortcut, or I just need a little head start. These are perfect. It's also nice because for your more advanced or more experienced stampers, they can still do lots of different techniques on top. So what I'm going to have you do is put your blank card onto this pad of paper that you've got in front of you, and we're going to brayer our pigment ink directly on top.
Say that again, brayer?
Brayer.
Like a layer?
Brayer. Brayer, yeah. And this is the Art Wheel, so this is from Clearsnap, and I love this nice sturdy brayer. What you're going to do is, we're working with 2 different colors here. My 2 favorites, Limon and Aruba. So we're going to start first of all with Limon, and we're going to take the brayer and you'll ink it up on your ink pad and run it directly onto your card.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and get that ink right onto your card, and you can see how beautifully it just goes right on there. That's the magic of pigment ink. Okay, so you've got that on there. Now, you also have a little, about 1-inch wide strip of white cardstock. While you've got your Limoni brayer, go ahead and ink up that piece of cardstock too, because that's going to be this piece that goes across the front. All right, so just give a little bit of ink to that, and you can kind of set that one aside. Yeah. Okay. It should be inside, tucked inside the card. Yep. Here, I'll get it for you. There you go. And just go ahead and give a little bit of ink to that as well. Okay.
How even do we want it or not even?
You don't have to have it even at all. It's really just so you can see it's going to glow from underneath that Aruba color. It's okay. No, that's okay. That's okay. That's fine. Because we're adding another color on top. No worries. Okay, so for the second layer of our card front, you can go ahead and set aside that little 1-inch strip and just tuck it aside so it's not directly under your hands. Now for the second portion of the card front, we're going to do it in kind of 2 steps. So I want to explain that to you before we get started. So we're going to use the Aruba ink, which is this lovely teal color. We're going to brayer this on to our card front and then immediately put the embossing powder on top. So before you start inking, you probably want to make sure that you have a piece of paper that you can tap off the embossing powder onto so you can funnel it back into the jar. Okay. So you might want to just pull off a sheet from your, no, because that you're going to be inking onto. So pull a sheet from your pad here and just go ahead and fold that up so that you can use it to funnel the embossing powder back in. And you might also want to give your brayer a quick clean with one of the baby wipes.
Thank you.
Yep. And we're going to use Opalescent clear embossing powder, and it's the white. So you can see even as I'm turning it, it's white, it's sparkly, it's beautiful, it looks like diamonds. So this is what we're going to put on top. So the process will be the same as with your first layer. You're going to ink up your brayer with the Aruba ink and get it all over the front of your card. Take the Opalescent clear embossing powder and sprinkle it over the entire front of the card. And then tap off the excess and put it back into the jar. And then you can go ahead and heat set it. Yes. Yes, you're going to put the Aruba ink on top of the Limon, and then you're going to immediately sprinkle it with the Opalescent clear. And then go ahead and heat set it. But this is going to give you the opportunity to see how that pigment ink is going to be an embossing ink as well.
What a pain, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're inking things that you don't want to ink. Okay. Right, just tap it off and then you can replace the rest of the embossing powder back into the jar. And you'll see that you've got that Limon glowing through the Aruba. And you can be a bit generous with it because you know you're going to return the excess embossing powder to the jar. So nothing is wasted. Now the nice thing about this is that it gives you the opportunity to use embossing powder in a slightly different way. Those of us who've been stamping for a long time, typically we think of heat embossing, you think of stamping an image or a sentiment or something, sprinkling on your black or your gold or your silver, and then heat setting it. And you can go ahead and start heat setting that. But the wonderful thing about this is that it gives you a bigger surface. You're actually creating your background with your embossing powders. And that's a different way of looking at it. And I always think it's fun to take a product that we all know and love and do something slightly different with it. Now the other thing to keep in mind as you're heat setting, and you'll discover this as you're doing it, because it's a larger surface, it will take a little bit longer than if you just stamped a flower, for example. So give yourself some time. How nice to be able to use that as a starting point. So this is the background. What do you think? Do you think you can do it with lots of different color combinations? And I love how that Limon just creates a glow underneath the Aruba. It really adds something more to it. So the rest of the card is very simple. That strip that you brayered, you may want to zap that with the heat tool again too, just to make sure that it's dry. And then you can go ahead and glue that to the black strip of cardstock. Now when you get ready to glue that piece down to the front of your card, I would recommend that you use some of the wet adhesives rather than that tape runner, because the tape runner doesn't tend to stick to the textured embossed background. So yeah, and there's also the quick grip here as well, so you might want to use that too. Okay. So whatever works best for you, and you'll probably want to pop the cap back on there because you know Murphy's Law, you're going to put your hand right in it.
I appreciate that.
Guess how I know. So that strip that you did, yeah, go ahead and hit it with a heat gun if it's still a little bit wet. And then you'll put it onto the black. And then you also have a couple of sets of stickers in front of you. And these have been generously shared by Hot Off the Press. These are their Dazzles. And so there are 3 different colors in here. I chose the black for this, but if you wanted to go with a different color, you could. And I just put the word hello down here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't listen.
Okay.
Can I get them, or are these just 2 we're all sharing?
You're all sharing, yeah. And there are a couple of different sentiments on there. You'll glue that strip onto the black piece of cardstock, and then you can glue it to the front of your card. And when you do glue it to the front of your card, use one of these, yeah, like that adhesive.
All right.
And then you can add your Dazzle sticker onto the front as well. And I put a little heart on there too. I think there are enough on that sheet that you can share.
Is this the glue we're supposed to use?
Yeah, for putting this onto here. You can use whatever glue you want to put the 2 pieces of paper together. Okay. How about this?
Oh. Thank you. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Okay. And there are some of these like little hearts and things. And then we also have a little piece of gingham ribbon, black and white gingham ribbon. I simply tied a knot in it and then glued it down on there. So you can just pop that down and you have a quick and easy card ready to go. And then the finishing touch for that is the Surfacez, the black Surfacez ink. Have you guys worked with this before? Okay, it's called Surfacez because it works on any type of surface, meaning porous and non-porous material. So it works on paper, but it also works on non-porous material like glass, plastic, acetate, or something that has a fairly non-porous surface like this embossed background. So I used it to go around the outside edge of my card just to add a little bit of definition. So you can do that with the black Surfacez Inkpad as well.
The first technique for doing the lines, that was with a brayer? Or
No, that's actually one of their creative cards. So Clearsnap makes them printed like that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Easy, pretty quick.
And then the ribbon.
And the ribbon is just tied in a knot and then glued down.
Is this dry clear?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Oh, good strategic use of the Dazzles on there. Good for you. And then for our second card, we're going to work with 2 different techniques, building on the same principles that we've just learned. So for this one, we're going to be working with a stencil, and you know stencils are really popular now. And Clearsnap has these great art screen stencils, and you've got one in front of you. This one is called Crooked, and it's my favorite, which is why I used it. I use it a lot. You should see my one at home. It looks loved. It looks loved, I should say that. So we're going to be doing the background of our card using the stencil and pigment ink and embossing powder. So if you look here on the example, you can see that my stripes are both pink and this beautiful kind of mint green. The pink is the ink, okay? So the pink is the pigment ink. The green is, depending on your pronunciation, peridot or peridot.
Peridot's much more American.
So depending on how you want to pronounce it, it's this one. But it's this lovely mint green color. And I think sometimes people look at colored embossing powders and they go, ooh, I think I'm attracted to this color, but I don't really know how to use it. So we're going to be using it to put onto our pigment ink stripes from our stencil. So here's the process. You're going to take that, you got a piece of white cardstock, it's about 6.5 inches. Okay, no, it's just a piece of cardstock, not folded, that one. And then you're going to take your stencil, go ahead and place it down, and we have some masking tape here, blue masking tape. Just tack it down on a couple of corners. You want it held down, but you don't need to, you know, tape it down for life. So go ahead and place that down, and you may just want to jump to the next part of it, just so you make sure you get that part done. And then you're going to take, we're also going to be working again with pigment inks. We're working with the Spiced Plum and Cupid for this. So you're going to take the Spiced Plum and you will apply the ink through the stencil onto the cardstock. You can use either the blending tool, and they will probably already look like this because of the class beforehand. So you can just keep this on there. You can use this, and this is what I use. This is the tool I really like. It fits in my hand and it's a good application. Or you can use one of the blending tools like this if you want to, either one. Now, what you'll do is simply take the applicator and just as you are, pounce it onto the ink pad and then apply the ink directly through the stencil onto your cardstock. I press and sort of scooch it around. And it's the Spiced Plum that you're working with. You want to get a lot of ink on there, really nice juicy application, because you're going to be applying your embossing powder on top, so you want it to stick. I kind of tap it down and scooch it a little bit. The reason that you don't want to simply take the ink pad and squash it down on top, I asked the same question, so I tried it at home. Because they're such juicy ink pads, everything seeps underneath the stencil, so you get a blob. Tap and scooch. And you'll do it all over the entire piece. Yep. Hey, something's different. Okay, so get that ink all over. It's hard to choose a favorite. So you're getting all of that nice, lovely ink on there. The next step, and I'll just tell you as you're still inking, after you get it all inky, go ahead and lift off the stencil carefully and set it aside, probably on one of these pieces of napkin or something. And then you are going to take your Peridot embossing powder, and you're going to apply the embossing powder on top. Now you'll notice that I have a variegated effect on here. You don't want to cover the stenciled portion entirely. You just want to get some areas. If you get more embossing powder on there than you want, you can just brush it off with your finger. I just like the shape of the handle, especially because it fits into my hand really well. I feel like I have a lot more control. Okay, so lift off the stencil and apply your Peridot embossing powder on top in areas of it, in patches. And if you get too much, you can just brush it off with your finger. And then go ahead and heat set that. It's kind of variegated. It's a little bit of a patchy effect. And then go ahead and heat set that. Tap off the excess and heat set it. Quite possibly. Would you like that? Look at that. Gorgeous. And there you have your background. I think it's a really nice way to use those colored embossing powders with your colored pigment inks in perhaps an unexpected way. And it creates some really great backgrounds. Okay, really neat. Oh, I like how you've got some really fine detail on there as well. Really cool. Sometimes accidents are the best way to discover things. That's how I discover a lot of things. Good and bad. Okay, so go ahead and heat set those. So the way I've positioned this onto the front of my card, so you have a folded card. You've also got a little strip of lavender cardstock. If you just tear one edge, glue it onto the front of your card toward the bottom, and then glue this stenciled piece on top. And then what you'll need to do is glue it down, turn over your card, and trim off the excess. Okay, maybe if I can hold yours up as an example, do you mind?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so she's torn the bottom edge of her cardstock. We're all card makers and we've all made our cards upside down and backwards, so you want to make sure the fold is where you want it to be. Place your strip of lavender cardstock down, glue it down, and then you'll take your piece of embossed cardstock, glue it down, overlapping, and then what you can do is turn it over and then just trim off any excess, okay? Okay. Glue it across the front of the card. Just flip your card over and use scissors to trim around the outside edge. And I have the stripes going, yeah, horizontally. I have my stripes of my stencil going horizontally, and the reason for that is mostly because I like to have the visual balance of the horizontal lines and then the vertical line of my stamped focal. Okay. Yeah, so they're going across this way. And then just glue that down and then trim off the excess.
You know, I accidentally got some purple on there and it looked good.
And the feather stamps that we're working with are from Hot Off the Press, who's been generous enough to share them with us. So this is their feather set. All kinds of beautiful feather stamps on here. This is one of my favorites too. So the one that we're going to use is this big silhouette feather design. It may be, for a lot of you, it may be already still on the block. So if you're looking for it on the stamp set, you may just need to look on the block, yeah. And this technique will work with any of the feathers in here. I like using it for this one though because it shows up a little bit better because it's a silhouette design. So here's the process for stamping and partial embossing. So if you look at the feather, you'll see that it has a two-tone effect. It's pink and it's also a little bit of a denim blue. So I have stamped this with Cupid, which is the beautiful pink, pale pink ink that you've got here. It's been stamped onto that piece of white cardstock and then immediately sprinkled with denim embossing powder. And the denim is this gorgeous, rich, dark blue. Same process as before. When you apply the embossing ink, you're not going to totally cover the entire image. So you can scuffle off a little bit with your finger if you get more on there that you want. So we're using Cupid pink ink to stamp the feather onto that strip of white cardstock and then add the denim embossing powder. Cool, isn't it? Yeah, it's denim blue. It's a deep, dark, rich blue. And sometimes I like using black, but I sometimes really like using that beautiful denim blue just to give a slightly different look.
Oh, is this for me? So just pop it on there.
Sorry? Yeah, exactly.
Why pour too much on it?
Push it nice and hard.
Not really.
You get
No,
extra
I mean you can vary it for the next time that you do it, but no, I think as long as you have something showing behind there, it just gives a little hint of it's slightly textured.
I'll never go to Ink anymore because
Okay.
that skips a little tiny bit.
Yeah, they're nice and inky, aren't they? Well, you want to leave some areas. Same thing as we did with the stenciling, yeah. And you can, if you get more on there that you want, you can always tap off a little bit of it. But you want to get a partial, it's the partial embossing. Yeah.
Table of paper demos. What else has that right now? This is really cool.
And after you have your embossed feather, what I did is edged around the outside with the Cupid pink. And so you may want to, as you're edging, because you know how it goes, you hold one side of it and then you get ink on your hand and then it goes around. So what I like to do is use that pink ink pad to edge around the outside and then maybe zap it with the heat gun and then continue going around. just so you don't get fingerprints where you don't want them to be. You can go ahead and edge around the outside with the Cupid pink ink. You can use that, or I use this one right here.
Oh.
And just went straight from the Inkpad onto the edge of the cardstock. And because it's a really slow drying ink, you'll probably want to edge one side, hit it with the heat gun, and then continue. It looks, you surprised yourself. I love that. And this technique, by the way, works great for flowers, feathers, swirls, anything that's a kind of organic design. Leaves would be beautiful, but silhouette designs seem to carry a little bit more visual impact when you're doing something like this. So what I've done here is just edged around the outside on all four edges with the Cupid ink, and then simply glued it down onto the front of the card. Now I also went around the entire card front also with Cupid ink. So if you want to do that, just kind of a finishing touch, then that's easy enough to do. But again, because it's so nice and juicy and slow drying, you'll want to make sure to do a little bit of heat setting with that too. The last little bit here is a piece of ribbon that you have probably underneath everything in front of you at this stage. And I just, again, tied that into a knot and glued it down onto the front. And these techniques, I think, are some that are really versatile depending on what type of stencils you use, what types of stamps, different colors of embossing powder, different colors of pigment inks. You have so many different choices for this. Yeah, they did a great job. And once you have that feather glued down onto your card front, you can go ahead and add that little knotted piece of ribbon. Glue that down if you want to ink around the outside edges of your card, and then you are done. So we have done 2 cards. You've learned 4 different techniques combining pigment inks with embossing powders, with stencils, with stamps. We've done brayering, we've done overlay embossing, we've done partial embossing, we've done embossing with stencils. You've worked hard. Well, good. Yeah, it's the wonderful thing about these products. You can do something that looks great and that is a technique and that you've put your, thought and energy into, but it actually is quite quick and easy to do. And very adaptable, I think. Yeah.
Because you can use whatever colors you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And depending on your stamp theme or image, you'll choose different colors. You'll choose different amounts of embossing powder in proportion to the ink. So you have lots of different choices to do. So I think you guys have done a great job. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you hanging out till the end of the show. If you're traveling far, near or far, have a safe trip back home.
Me too.
And there's no rush to leave. You can do your finishing touches. Do make sure there's a little bag in front of everyone with a very nice gift from Clearsnap inside here. You have ink pads, you have some of the inks, you've got some dabbers in here as well. So this is Clearsnap's gift to you. So be sure and take this with you when you leave and enjoy. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great time. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you. Thanks.